Hello everyone. So today we will look at the concept of W-Fragen in German. So what does it mean by W-Fragen? Which means that how you can ask questions the way you do in English. For example, what is your name, where you come from, you know, with whom you are talking, who is this, where are you, something like this. So all this question which starts with W or way in German. So where, right, what, and then who, then whom, how. How is the exception here, which but you can also ask with how, right? How many apples or something like this. So in the same way you have in the German, which is called W-Fragen, to ask questions starting with the verbs, with the words W and then following the verb, right? So I have a table already here for those kind of words, and then we will look at those words and see what they mean in English, and then we see some sentence structure along with it, and then you will understand how you can ask questions using these words. So for example, the first one is in the list is called V, right? So first we will check the meanings of all those words. So V is how, then where is who, and wo is where, then woher is from where, wohin is to where, wann is when, right? And we feel, we feel, so we feel is how much. I mean, if you translate literally, it will be how much. And then we feel with an E is how many. And was is what, as in English. Again, was what, right? And then mit wem is with whom. So wem is whom, with whom, right? So when you want to say with whom, so mit wem, with whom you went to the party, with whom you are talking to, so mit wem, right? And then wen is whom, and warum is why, right? So why also have different words which you can use, wieso and uh, other ones, but warum is the most common. So these are the meanings in English. So we have the question words in German: wie, how, where, who, wo, where, woher, from where, wohin, to where, then wann, when, and we feel over. So we feel is how much, we feel is how many, was is what, mit wem is with whom, when is whom, and warum is why. Okay, so now look at the sentence structure. So you already know that for a normal sentence you have subject, verb is always at the second position, and then you have the object, right, in the simple sentence structure. But here when you ask a question, the question word will come at the first position. That is always true. It will always come at the first position, like here, right? And then follows the verb, right? Then you can put the verb and then the subject and then everything else, right? For example, if you ask v hyphen z, so here it is saying what is your name, you are asking, but here v hyphen z, like the literal translation is what are you called, right? So we have first one, v hyphen z. So the literal translation would be what are you called, but you can also say what is your name, right? You can ask this way, right? It's an exception, like how the translation is happening, but in German you say v hyphen z, how are you called, how people call you, right? That what is your name, essentially you are asking. Now second one is where is thus, you know so where is thus, right? So who is that? Where is who? And you're asking who is that? You point at somebody and you ask where is thus, right? And then wo is air, right? So third one is wo is air. So wo is where is he? You're asking the question where is he? So you can see every place we have the verb at the second position as the original rule in the German, but the question verb always come at the first position when you make a question, like here, right? And then comes everything else. So for example, subject and then more information if you have a longer sentence. But that's how you make a question using the W forms in German, right? So now moving on, then you have woher kommt er? From where he's coming, right? Woher, from where? Then wohin will er gehen? To where he wants to go. Wohin will er gehen? And wann kommt er? When he is coming. Wie viel Uhr geht er? At what time he is going? On wie viele Tasche hat er? How many bags he have? Yeah. Like sorry. So here now you see. So I have we feel how many we feel, right? This turns to how much, and then we feel there's an extra e is how many. So when you talk about things which you can count, right? So if you can count them, countable, then you will use we feeler. And if you have how much that you can't count, you can measure, like, how much milk, right? Like 2 liters, 3 liter, but how many glass of milk? So then you can count the glasses, like 5 glasses of milk. So we feeler, right? So it's non-countable, right? So you can say how many tomatoes? So we feel a tomaten, right? You can count the tomatoes, right? So we feel ua, you can't count the time in the sense, like, it's like a quantified thing. So that's why we say we feel ua, and then you have we feel a taschen, how many bags, right? Because you can count the bags. So in that sense, whenever you're asking about something, how much or how many, you can remember, if I can count those, then I will add an e, we feeler, and then if not, then it will be normal we feel. So that's for asking how much and how many. Then next one, was hat er gemacht? What did he do, right? So was is what, was will er haben? What does he want, right? He wants something, will er haben, want to have. Then mit wem spricht er? With whom he is talking. Wen sucht er? Whom he is looking for. And warum trägt er ein Hut? And why he dressed up with a hat, right? He has a hat on his head. So warum? Why? He's wearing a hat, right? So this is how you can make the questions with W-Fragen. So simple sentence structure. You have W words at the first, and then you have verb at the second position. Then you have the subject, and then so on. And the normal answerable questions are normal, right? Which are subject plus verb plus object, maybe, and then some information at the end, right? So this, but the verb in German is always at second position. So this is also followed when you ask the questions, right? So now let's look at some example, and then we try to make a sentence. So you can try to do it on your own, pause the video and try to make questions out of these, and you can match the answer. Otherwise I will do the solution for these ones. Okay, so let's start. So we z heißen, so we can make a question. So first we will have we fragen. So we heißen, the verb comes z and then the subject, right? So here is our W question, and then we have the verb and then the subject, right? We heißen z. So now ihr Vorname ist wie. So how can we make a question? So we will do the W fragen first. Wie Ist verb, verb comes, then subject, ihr, Vorname, object. What is, how are you called? What is your Vorname is the first name, right? For is first name, and then Nachname is after name, which is the last name, right? Then woher sie kommen. Again, woher, from where, then verb, kommen, sie, subject. Woher kommen sie, right? So verb is always at the second position, but the W-Fragen, we are asking a question, so we start with the W's, right? Then next one, Sie, wo wohnen. So wo wohnen Sie, right? In the same way, verb is at the second position, and we start with the W-Fragen, wo. Where do you live? Wo wohnen Sie? The last one now, von Beruf, was Sie sind. So we will ask the question with was, what, sind, verb, Sie, von Beruf, right? What is your profession, or what are you professionally, right? What do you work as? Wo sind Sie von Beruf, right? Then again we have the wo and was at the first, the question terms, and then we have the verb at the second position, and then everything else later, right? So that's how we make W-Fragen in German. If you have any doubt, you can write in the comments. You can also write your answers, and then we will meet in the next video.